Councillor John Tate is not a happy man. Last night he resigned from Council's City Management and Public Safety Committees over the 9.47% general rate rise across Newcastle.
I can't sit by and see these sort of increases continue. This council seems to be taking the option that you just keep increasing the rates, and that's not satisfactory.
A budget decision to slash Newcastle's public library hours has also raised the ire of Councillor Tate. A total of 78 operating hours will be lost from Council's 11 libraries after a cut in staffing levels. The most severely affected will be Lambton Library, now closed 4 days a week.
The buck stops with the council. The council is the one that's got to perform. If the council performs, well then these matters will be redressed.
Mayor Greg Hees says both committees will be losing a valued councillor.
I feel that I'm losing a good chairman, and I'm feeling I'm losing someone who has a fresh approach and a different approach to ideas.
Blake Doyle, NBN News.
The Wilson family, who was evacuated from their home yesterday after a massive landslip, has finally received some good news. The saturated ground gave way and left the rear of the house precariously suspended. By this morning, the land had stabilised, causing no further damage. Builders volunteered their services and spent the day constructing a temporary structure that will prop up the house until a more permanent solution is found.
We're trying to save this house from falling into the hole that you can see.
And how?
Just by bringing a heap of material in to get the trucks across, put a platform down in steel, and then jack some props up from underneath it to stabilise it.
A relieved Wilson family should be able to move back into their home within a matter of weeks.
And Mr McCoy, and he's volunteered to get in there and do this work, although he's under no obligation to do it. He's got my utmost admiration and respect for it.
And still the cause of the disaster is unclear. However, early predictions are that the problem was the result of a deep-seated landslide triggered by the intrepid downpours. Antonia Kidman, NBN News.
Day 24 of the dispute and the biggest test yet. Hunter Valley No. 1 management ordered a train go to the mine's loader and be filled with coal, but around 100 workers blocked the rail line in an act of defiance. A handful of police ensured a peaceful protest as a Mexican standoff began, the train pulling up 200 metres from the picket line. Victory came an hour later as the train driver, a public transport union member, refused to cross the line.
We were always confident that the train driver would respect the picket, and he's confirmed that that's the case, so yeah, we're very happy.
I think they've drummed this up that they were going to make something out of us, out of this today, and we've shown them if we stick together we can overcome what they're trying to do to us. Tide's turning against the company, simple as that.
Workers are asking management they be placed under a collective agreement with CRA, but management says it will talk to the almost 300 striking workers once they return to work. At a cost of $1 million a day, the strike is proving costly for CRA. With some $12 million in coal to be sold overseas, CRA says it will again try to break the picket line.
We'll be ordering more trains. I expect more trains to be up in the next couple of days, and we'll be continuing to try to load them.
In a blow to CRA, the CFMEU announced late this afternoon the strike action will continue for another 2 weeks. After 4 hours on the tracks, the train eventually crossed the picket line, only to turn around and return empty to Newcastle. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Statistics show Aboriginal people suffer more health problems more often than the wider community. Among the most common complaints, cardiovascular disease and diabetes, problems which some say are caused by the weight of social injustice.
If we don't have good mental health and good coping strategies and good debriefing strategies, then that sets the seed for a whole lot of other physical and social elements that are occurring now.
Helping the Hunters Black community deal with these issues is a small team of workers. They care for 7 communities and treat 700 Aborigines each year. Celebrating their heritage today, Aboriginal dancers and a poet at Newcastle's John Hunter as part of Aboriginal Week. Meanwhile, another kind of toe tapping in Medford, more Western than traditional. On hand to mark the opening of the Playgroup and Hobby Craft Centre at the Minda Local Aboriginal Land Council was a band of supporters reaping the benefits of their labour. Similar events are planned for the week leading up to National Aboriginal Day on Friday. Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
Even though his name may escape us, the work of Kevin Best is familiar to many. The original works of this artist are often found as prints on biscuit tins, candy tins, placemats and coasters. For the next 5 days, this local boy has returned to his home region to exhibit close to 60 of his original works. A self-described romantic impressionist, Kevin relies heavily on the traditional style.
I guess I'm a pretty old-fashioned guy. I never paint a fella mustering sheep on a motorbike. I put him on a horse. I have post and rail fences, not the up-to-date steel fences and electric fences.
At 65, Kevin has been painting professionally for 20 years. He spent the first part of his working life as a stockbroker in Sydney. His deep love of the Australian landscape is highlighted through his unusual use of light and the presence of the Australian gum tree. Antonia Kidman, NBN News.
It's not every day young fans of the Breakers get to meet their heroes, but a group of kids involved in the Smith family's Educate Assistance program did exactly that. The program is designed to improve the participants' life chances and allow disadvantaged children to take part in activities normally beyond their means. Breakers star Clayton Zane kept a watchful eye over the group, as did midfielder Mark Wilson.
They like to get involved, and based on what I've just seen now, their passing and dribbling is very good. It's good for them to get involved as well.
Meanwhile, a different spin on soccer today at the Breakers Junior Training Camp. An impromptu game of volleyball soccer style is just one activity at the camp, attended by juniors from Taree to Scone. The camp has blossomed into one of Australia's biggest, with more than 630 taking part in the 2-week event. It's been a topsy-turvy season so far for the Falcons, 6 wins and 11 losses. The next few weeks are crucial to their 1997 campaign, with the side fighting to make the playoffs. Wins in their next 3 matches will put them on track. A win this weekend against the Giants is the only thing on coach Sean Dennis's mind.
You betcha it's critical. You know, we can't afford to drop, very many more games, or we can pretty much write the playoffs off. So we have to come out ready to play tomorrow night, and the guys know it, and I feel that they're ready to play.
Preparation hasn't been smooth for the Falcons. Ben Pepper and Tony Jensen have battled the flu, and Scott McGregor is recovering from a shoulder injury.
They're the adversities you've got to face during a season. You can't expect to go through injury-free and have no problems. So we just have to be mentally tough enough to come out and play hard and be ready to play the game plan.
The good news is Butch Hayes will take the court tomorrow night after a flying visit to Korea. Tip-off is at 7:30 tomorrow night at the Entertainment Centre. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Desperate to meet its contracts and export coal, Rio Tinto today began loading ships with coal from its other Hunter Valley mines. Since Friday, striking miners outside the Hunter Valley No. 1 mine have paralysed the movement of coal to the port by train. The Freight Corp drivers who belong to the Public Transport Union have so far refused to cross the picket lines.
We need to start moving coal as quickly as possible. We'll be seeking discussions with Freight Corp, who we are hopeful of having a reached agreement with the PTU about moving trains into the loading point as soon as possible.
After 30 days, the dispute came full circle today when the Industrial Relations Commission ordered both the union and company back to the negotiating table. But both parties agreed to defer talks until next Wednesday.
Look, I think public pressure is mounting on them. I mean, I think community pressure is building up, and I think people expect them to abide by the umpire's decision. And hopefully, the additional time will let that sink in.
In an attempt to force the company's hand, the union wrote to Rio Tinto's investors and customers, telling them to buy their coal from elsewhere because of the ongoing strike. Simone Cobb, NBN News.
We're just having a good time and doing something good for the community as well. That's really what it's all about.
In a bid to increase the level of female sports administrators in the workplace, the state government has awarded a select series of scholarships to leaders of the field. Newcastle Uni Sport and Rec officer Helen O'Neill is one of 16 women to win a $3,000 Level 1 scholarship.
I probably don't pat myself on the back. I think it's a good stepping stone for women's sport.
Ms O'Neill now hopes her efforts will encourage more females into the field of sports management.
And often women need role models or someone who has been there, done that, sort of a syndrome. And yes, that's what this is mainly about.
With such incentive now on offer, it seems the last real frontier for women in sport may soon be conquered.
In saying that also, I think it has to be the best person for the job. But if you give the women the skills, they can then apply for positions. So it's a big step.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The union's resolve was strengthened today by a visit from Senator Bob McMullen, who sent miners a heartening message that the ALP would not desert them in their time of need.
Don't let John Howard's new industrial laws take away your job security or your standard of living.
His sentiments were echoed by the opposition leader Kim Beazley and the Premier Bob Carr. Senator McMullen told miners that workers around Australia were concerned for their collective rights and urged them to stand firm.
They're not out there asking for the moon and the stars. There aren't very many of them in Rolls Royces and eating caviar. They're out there trying to make a decent living.
The longer this goes, the stronger people are getting.
Senator McMullen called on Rio Tinto to accept the recommendations of the Industrial Relations Commission, which would see a return to work. But the company says it can't afford to allow union-controlled work practices to continue.
For the future of the coal industry, we have to move forward and improve productivity, and that means removing a lot of archaic and outdated work practices.
At 3 o'clock this morning, 2 trucks carrying coal washing material broke the picket line for the first time since the strike began almost 6 weeks ago. Outraged miners are setting up lighting today to ensure nothing gets through again.
What we intend to do, Simon, is operate our business whilst the strike continues. We have a lawful right to do so, and if that means bringing in supplies and equipment at any time of the day, that's what we'll do.
Although the Prime Minister will be in Newcastle tomorrow, the miners will take their concerns to a major union rally in Sydney. Simone Cobb, NBN News.
Rebecca Archibald has her sights set on a prosperous future, and she's well on the way. She's been recognised by the Hunter Institute of Technology for topping her 4-year hairdressing trade course.
You put the effort in, you get whatever, what you achieve is what you get, I guess.
Rebecca was one of 41 students honoured today at this year's Hunter Institute of Technology Awards. Depressing job forecasts were swept aside and confidence reigned supreme.
Training is extremely important. Without good training, you can't go forward.
Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
John Howard made history last night as the first Prime Minister to officially stay overnight in Newcastle for 50 years. Today, interest shifted to the marginal seat of Patterson, Mr Howard shoring up support for Liberal MP Bob Baldwin, who's holding the seat by just 0.4%. First stop, an official opening of a small Tomago business importing hydraulic lifts. Mr Howard also met with a delegation from the proposed Red Bank power station near Singleton, who are hopeful of receiving tax concessions to get work on the project started by September.
His commitment was that he'd go back and he would look at it, and he was particularly interested in the environmental side of the technology that was there.
There was more electoral groundwork, this time at Shoal Bay. Mr Howard meeting with elderly residents of the Harbourside nursing home. This afternoon, Mr Howard arrived at Williamtown to a media scrum and for talks with British aerospace chiefs regarding Newcastle's $850 million lead-in fighter contract. Last month, Mr Howard saw firsthand how the Hawks are assembled in England's north. Today, he turned the first sod on the assembly site at Williamtown, claiming the economic possibilities flowing from the project are sky high.
That will mean the generation of additional jobs and give further cause for optimism and hope for the Hunter region.
After 2 days in the Newcastle area, Mr Howard says he's found a city ready to bounce back and move forward.
I see a community in the Hunter Valley which is an example to the rest of Australia. They've been kicked in the guts in certain areas, but they've had the resilience and the pluck to put that behind them and get up and go, and I think that's an example to the rest of the Australian community.
Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Meanwhile, back at the picket line, Rio Tinto's proposal was creating a stir with its optimistic overtones that the stalemate could at last be broken.
It's the first time the company have indicated that they've been prepared to talk to us since the strike commenced, so from our point of view it's a major breakthrough.
But the union remains wary of Rio Tinto's motives, worried the $170 a week wage increase is simply a smokescreen.
I'm a little bit suspicious of the offer. I think it's designed to divert attention away from the fact that the company have been refusing to negotiate.
The company says it will reach a collective agreement for significant changes to union-controlled work practices. The union says it can't respond until it's analysed the proposal. In the meantime, the Industrial Relations Commission has ordered Freight Corp to start sending trains to the Hunter Valley No. 1 mine. But as the final decision on safety grounds still rests with the driver, the union is confident trains won't get through until the dispute is settled.
If Rio Tinto order trains, we will make sure that there's a sizeable presence at the rail loading.
Simone Cobb, NBN News. Standing almost as high as a horse with coats of thick fur, these handsome beasts are worth a small fortune. Bred in Australia, the pure Canadian elk are in quarantine for export to Korea, the first commodity of its kind to leave the country. Ken and Marilyn Ezzy established the stud and quarantine station near Muswellbrook just 18 months ago.
We did a lot of work for other people that had small quarantine stations, and we found that we were passing our knowledge on to them. So we decided to do it ourselves, and we haven't looked back since.
64 elk, which have had their antlers cut off for export, will be flown out next month, along with 120 red deer. But the huge demand overseas is not for venison, but the antlers. Called the velvet, they grow annually on the beast and fetch $250 a kilogram.
The blood in the velvet is highly sought after by Asians for its medicinal properties. By consuming it in a broth, it is used for various purposes, including fertility and improving general health.
With enough orders to keep Ken busy for the next 10 years, he says the elk industry has huge potential in Australia.
We're very lucky in Australia because we've got a clean country. If we keep it that way, we're laughing all the way.
But Ken says deer breeding is about more than making a profit. It's a challenging lifestyle.
They cry like a baby. The funny thing about it, they do cry. They don't like being hurt. So the bigger they are, the easier they are to work with.
They can be quite dangerous though, can't they?
Oh yeah, but that's fun.
Simone Cobb, NBN News.
The majority of waste going into Port Stephens' 3 existing landfills is organic matter such as food scraps, but not for much longer. 21,000 local households have been issued with split recycling bins. They're a precursor to Australia's first commercial composting plant to be built at Raymond Terrace.
You could liken it to an enclosed backyard composting system. A mechanical backyard composting system is doing nothing differently to a backyard composting system.
It has the added benefit of using sludge from the local sewage treatment works to drive the composting process. The end result is agricultural-grade compost. The new system promises to remove 80% of materials from the waste stream, meaning that once it's up and running, the council will be able to close its 3 existing landfills.
There's not a lot of land to build landfills in the first place. We also have an environment that's very short on nutrients, very sandy country, and this process gets us away from the landfills while providing the nutrients back into our environment.
The only landfill in Port Stephens will be the one at the plant, and it will only accept non-recyclable materials. The plant, though, is not without its critics after complaints in America about the smell.
The best I can describe the smell inside the plant is a barnyardy type agricultural smell. Outside the plant, the smell will go out through biofilters and will be removed.
It's expected the plant will be operational by the end of next year. Phil Hind, NBN News.
The Knights aren't fazed by the run of Parramatta. The Eels may be looking for their 11th straight win, but as the old saying goes, every record is there to be broken.
Yeah, that's right, and may as well be us to break them.
Many consider Andrew Johns will be the key on Sunday. The Knights halfback turned in a memorable effort from the bench against Souths, and while the team won 30-0, he says there's still plenty of room for improvement.
Against Parramatta, you only probably get 3 or 4 opportunities to score points, so we've got to make sure when they arise, we do take the opportunities.
The Eels boast a star-studded lineup.
There's some top players there, Simons, Dimmock, Pay, Wirrat on the wing very quick. But, I think we can back ourselves.
Bookies almost agree Parramatta is favourite, but only just. A more defined market for the World Club Challenge match between Hunter and Castleford. The tourists may have looked reasonably good at this afternoon's training run, but are given no chance of victory. The Mariners are 33-1 on and give the Tigers 36.5 points start. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. After a comprehensive Friday night victory over Sydney, Newcastle travelled to Adelaide for the second leg of its weekend doubleheader, the home of that 42-point drubbing last month. But the memory of the defeat proved to be a motivational factor. Into the starting five through Tony Jensen's sickness, Greg Blake started in style. A similar strength for Scott McGregor, and Newcastle raced to an early lead until Leo Trimmingham followed the example to bridge the deficit. The Falcons took a 6-point lead into quarter time. It had decreased by 2 at the main break, a rare error from Butch Hayes helping the locals back into the match. It all contributed to a memorable finish. The side shared the lead in the final 2 quarters before Dave Simmons gave the Falcons a 5-point buffer with a minute left. Trimmingham potted 3, giving teammate John Reilly one last chance of victory with only 2 seconds left on the clock. Newcastle home by 2.
We dropped a fair bit of ball, and to Castleford's credit, they played a lot better than what they did back home.
Well, that's what we were saying earlier.
It looks idyllic paddling through the tidal creeks and channels running into Port Stephens, but it's mostly dead water with not a fish or bird to be seen. These are streams with high levels of sulphuric acid and heavy metals, not from nearby industries, but from man's scarring of the swamplands.
We've got the legacy of a chemical change. We don't even know fully what it's carrying. I know it's carrying aluminium, cadmium.
Trenches were dug to drain the surrounding swamps for farming and development during the 1980s and early 90s. The drains exposed acid sulphate soils to air. This caused sulphuric acid runoff, which is transported by heavy rains down the creeks and eventually into the port.
See all the red on the banks here? The young mangroves have got the dust all over them.
The end result could see widespread poisoning of the marine environment. Local landowner Jim Finlay is attempting to turn back the acid tide.
This could be rehabilitated using the tailings from the old drains put back into these drains, shallow drains dug where the tailings were, and lime over where you've covered the old drains. But your detritus layer of your mangroves should be a feed ground. Like, you should have life there. And as it is, it looks pretty bloody dead.